Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin, and today we've got rather a special show. It's the first in a series of two, and we're going to call it The French Connection. And to join me on the show is Joanna Leggett, co-founder of Leggett Immobilier, and Simon Liddiard, who's French coastal specialist for Leggett Immobilier. Welcome to you both.
Well,
thanks, Steve.
Hope you've had a good trip over to the UK and you're not missing the sunshine. And
It's a little bit colder at the
it's a
moment.
bit dismal outside, isn't it? But there we are. Okay. All right. Now, John, I'm going to start off with you. Have got before we get on to the particular areas of France we're going to talk about, I've got a couple of questions for you that have come in to us. And the first one is this. We've now seen off the economic and environmental issues of 2022, or so we hope. Have the effects of the summer forest fires and the economy and all these other things brought together, have they caused a resistance with buyers?
Not so much. I mean, I think people were worried about it, but it's not so much as it has been in areas like Portugal and Spain, for example, where the temperatures rose to about 47 degrees.
It's 40 here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously when it happened, it does put people off, and people might move to other areas. However, in France, the great thing about France is we have two of the biggest construction companies in the world with Vinci and Bouygues, and it's already being reconstructed. So I was quite surprised actually at going down to some of the areas and some of the villages that had been affected, and they've already been rebuilt. They've also started a new tree programme because obviously a lot of the southwest of France, as we know, is pine. So they're planting lots of different species of trees, which will stop that happening in the future. But as I said, the good thing about France is that they do act. You know, you don't get, I really noticed coming back to London that, you know, traffic due to roadworks just seems to be continually going for months on end, whereas France, they're extremely quick, you know, they're in and out. And things are rebuilt or constructed. The roads are fantastic. So I think I don't think it's affected people coming to France so much, but I think we might be seeing more people coming that might have thought about Spain or Portugal, because some of the work hasn't been done there. Portugal's slightly poorer depending on what areas you're in. So I mean, it did have an effect at the time. The other thing about France, of course, is it's extremely environmentally friendly. So there's lots of grants available for insulation and things like that as well. So I think it's I think every country was affected with fires. Not so much the UK, although I think there was somewhere in the UK.
We certainly did, yeah.
Yeah. So but hopefully, you know, the way reconstruction is done and how new builds are done now, that's all taken into account with climate change.
Right, okay. And I suppose the other plus for France is that, certainly from the UK, you can drive there relatively easily. And I suppose with all the trouble we've had with airports and aeroplanes and cost of flying at the moment, I mean, the cost of flight seems to be going through the roof. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I'm not energy. Well, I suppose it's the cost of fuel. You know, like with everything else.
That's on a downward spiral, isn't it?
Yes. So, but again, yeah, as you say, and also COVID had a massive effect on France in a positive way because you don't have to get out your car. You know, you can literally drive from A to B, particularly if you come across the tunnel. You know, you drive your car onto the train and you drive and you arrive at your holiday home or your home in France. So that had a really good positive effect, and we have seen a lot more people coming with cars and also pets. You can't fly with pets, so you know, again, if you want to bring your animals and you want to come and spend quite a lot of time in France, well, up to 3 months without a visa, you can do that as well.
We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the series, but can you easily take your pets into France?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a little bit more tricky since Brexit. They have to have a passport, of course, which they did before. It's slightly more expensive because there's a couple more tests that they need to have.
No smiling on the picture.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Can't say sausages.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, it is still quite a simple process, you know, between as it was before bringing pets.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Joanna. Simon, we're going to move straight on to your area of expertise, and you're going to have to excuse my French pronunciations here. So you're a specialist in the areas of Girondine, Arcachon Bay and Landaise coast. Is that right?
That was fine. I completely understood.
Okay, good. Well, that's half the battle, isn't it? So, and the question is, what is it in your view that attracts people to these particular regions? I suppose as opposed to the more conventional or upmarket areas of the sort of southeast of France.
Right. Yeah. Well, if I point to it on a map, because I think there's one
sure.
behind, and we'll talk. I can sort of. We're really talking about as the area from this point here, which is at the end of the Gironde estuary, all the way down to Spain.
Right.
That's the sort of southwest Atlantic coast, and that's one long beach all the way down. It's about 200 miles of golden sands, backed with pine forests, and also lakes, which are often overlooked, but are a real pull just inland from the beach. One of the things about the beaches on the southwest of France is the sand is so fine. I almost find every time I go anywhere else in Europe to a beach, I'm always a bit disappointed by the sand not being as fine as in our area. So that's in itself is a great pull.
Sure.
There's a sense of nature, a mix of the beach, the sand, and the pine forests and big open spaces that you perhaps don't get in areas like the southeast of France, which tend to be a bit more built up. So people want to feel that and come to it. There's obviously food as well, and we've got great oyster areas, particularly in the Arcachon Bay, because the whole area, and I'll maybe go on to develop that, but the area is made up of lots of different sub-areas. But we've got lots of oyster production. We've got obviously wine. The northern area just back from the beaches above Bordeaux is full of vineyards. And so it's very easy to combine a beach holiday with wine tasting.
Okay. So, and what about the logistics of getting there, particularly, first of all, by driving or secondly, by shall we say, public transport? I mean, is it easy?
It's one of the big pluses, actually, because you've got different ways of getting there. So the motorway network is very good, and so you can get to Bordeaux and the southwest of France on the motorway, and then the roads within to get to the coasts from there are very good. So
are they toll roads or?
They're toll roads to Bordeaux and south of Bordeaux, but then to the actual coast, for example, between Bordeaux and Arcachon, that's a free motorway. Then you've got the airport. So Bordeaux Airport's actually located to the west of Bordeaux, which makes it fantastic to access the coast. People literally come and pop over to the airport, pick people up, and then take them back to the beach house within 35 minutes.
Wow.
And then the other big pull, which you were talking about transport earlier on, is it's trains. We've got the TGV fast train link from Paris to Bordeaux, which arrives in 2 hours, 5 minutes. And there's actually an extension from that to the town of Arcachon on the coast. And from Bordeaux to Arcachon, it's another 45 minutes. So the same TGV train comes in from Paris, goes straight to Arcachon. You walk to the beach 200 meters from there. So it means you have, on a Sunday night, you see lots of Parisians with their little suitcases walking up and down to the beach to get the train back.
Now, as our Chancellor is saying at the moment, don't do us down, because don't forget by 2038 we're going to have HS2.
Right.
It's not going to come anywhere near London now, but apart from that, it should work pretty well. And as Joanna was referring to, our road traffic maintenance is probably not quite the best, but I'm sure we're catching up with France.
Well, there is the Eurostar link. So,
I suppose so.
And the Eurostar link, the fast Eurostar link today to Paris, but in 2026, we were looking at the local newspapers in the southwest last week. The idea of the wine train to Bordeaux in 2026 looks like it's coming back. So that probably means that you'll be able to jump on the wine train and actually go to Arcachon straight to the coast in 5 hours, 40 minutes from London.
That's amazing, isn't it? That really is.
And actually, they will do what they say, because, as you know, we talked about on another programme, they have done the ski train, which is exactly the same, goes straight to the Alps. So that's the benefit of they're really good with their infrastructure in France. And as you were talking about motorways, they're so clear. They're clear. You don't. It's not like the M25, for example. Well, you can get there quite quickly. Yeah.
I used to live in Switzerland for a while, and I mean the road down. I used to drive over. I mean, they don't have the hovercraft anymore, but I used to jump on the hovercraft with the car, straight down to Lyon, down that way, and the toll roads were fantastic. It really was a joy to travel, unlike the UK, I'm afraid.
And of course, even if you don't want to do the motorways, you can take the B roads or the A roads, which aren't toll roads. And then, of course, you go through the beautiful towns and villages, which is a really nice way if you want to take a little bit more time and stay at little Chambre d'Hôtes on the way down. There's all of those opportunities as well.
There's almost a renaissance of that at the moment in France with sort of slow travel going back down those A roads. It's all sort of parallel to the motorways because legally they had to build a parallel A road to the motorway. So it's another way absolutely to rediscover those areas.
And experience different areas of France as you're coming down as well.
I think I'm going to ask you to be quiet now.
Okay.
Because I think we'll all be off. Okay, that's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break when we'll be discussing with Joanna and Simon more of the issues around France. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time with the French connection, and that means Joanna Leggett and Simon Liddiard. Welcome back. Joanna, second question. How's the market been affected by the war and unrest caused by the Russian invasion of Ukraine? Has it affected France terribly?
Well, it's affected everywhere, I would say, in Europe. I think some of the biggest things that it's affected is building materials because they've become expensive. Obviously, fuel costs have gone up, which means transportation of building materials has affected us as well. Although saying that, France is extremely cheap in comparison to a lot of other European countries, and particularly to the UK. So we still are seeing British buyers wanting to move to France because, the energies might be more, it's going to be about the same price, to be fair, as what it is in the UK, but you'll get more value for money in France. You'll have more outside space, you'll have bigger buildings, unless you're in cities and things. So it sort of balances up. And the other thing I think, which you need to look at, before people might have bought a holiday home and not rented it out because obviously it's cheap enough not to do that. But I mean, we have our own property management company now as well. And we've seen a lot of increase in people now deciding, well, actually, I've got a holiday home. The prices have gone up. It is going to cost me more for repairs and fuel and things like that. So why not rent it out? So, renting a property out in France, bearing in mind how often you would actually use it yourself, covers all of that because obviously you've got the income then to pay all of its costs. So that's the sort of way around it. I mean, we're not close enough for it to affect us, but as it's affecting everywhere in Europe, it affects France in the same way. I
think the real crunch will come when the reconstruction of Ukraine starts. There'll be such a demand for building materials there from worldwide sources. It's going to cause a problem everywhere. And where you've had Russia go into different countries before, like Georgia, for instance, the reconstruction program has been phenomenal. I mean, in some ways, it's almost a plus. They're almost sort of clearing down the country and rebuilding a new modern society. And I guess at the end of the day, there'll be enough support for Ukraine to do that again.
We would hope so, of course.
We do.
And we've noticed it even in our local town close to us had a freak weather tornado, which came through, and the hailstones broke quite a lot of the roofs. And we've never had a shortage of tiles. And actually, because of all of this that's going on, people have been waiting quite a long time for roof tiles. Which never happened before. So it has made an impact.
I mean, I think
everywhere.
my personal view is I think wherever you're thinking of buying, if you're going to buy somewhere abroad, I would tend to do it now. I really would, because I think things are just going to get more and more expensive. Not through inflation, but through literal cost. I think that's going to be the thing.
I think it's also putting a premium on renovated properties as well. People are looking at that quite closely. I think
so. And I'm not sure that interest rates are going to stay particularly high, because I know, in this country, we always look at inflation as a danger, and we always look at the solution to that as increased interest rates. But the causes of inflation this time are different. They're specific events that are causing it, not the usual thing either, high wages or you know, too much spending, too much credit. It's different now. So I'm not sure that high interest rates are the instrument to solve the problem. I think we need other solutions.
It's also a question of confidence, general confidence.
I think you're right, and I think I saw on the TV this week that the Chancellor is saying, well, please don't talk down the economy, talk it up, and I think there may be some sense in that. And on top of which, again, you do get the commentaries that say, look, you chose Brexit, you've ditched your biggest trading partner. Do you not think there's going to be a cost to this? Of course there is, you know. So I think we've all got a bit to learn here, haven't we, in a way? But yeah, I think your point on materials is very well made. Okay, Simon, let's move on to your area of expertise again and talk about the areas we briefly discussed in part 1. Now, these particular areas are presumably made up, like the rest of France, of hugely differing markets, you know, dependent on area, and indeed building styles. So perhaps you'd be kind enough to run us through some of those styles and some of those areas, and what are the redeeming features of each?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, they are very eclectic in differing styles, and what that translates at is opportunities, depending on what you're looking for, and obviously different budgets as well. And within the broad southwest coastal area, you'll be able to find that. So if I take an example of we've sold recently several 2-bed houses in a development where there's a ground cost, a management cost, because it's a holiday village. And the rental that you're obliged to rent for 5 weeks minimum a year, those properties, but that pays back the ground rent. But it means that those properties we've been selling, and they're about 30 minutes inland from the Arcachon Bay and the coast, and they've been selling for around the €100,000 mark. So I mean, very, very, very accessible. And then at the other end of the spectrum, if you go to Arcachon Bay itself, you've got lots of historic houses in Arcachon itself. Some huge houses, really dominant, with a style which is quite symmetrical, bricks, wood, and they're at turn of the century, and it gives us a very pleasant architectural style to the town itself. And all of the new builds are obliged to adhere to that. Okay. So the town itself looks really, really quite pleasant. But you just need to go across the bay from there to Cap Ferret on the other side, where you've got the Atlantic beach and the Bay beach on the other side, and it's a kind of Hamptons type feel. Lots of open spaces, big architect-built properties, a lot with wooden clad as well to give reference to the nature surrounding them. So different kind of feel. I've got an Australian friend who recently bought there, and she said, it's the place in France where I feel like I'm home. Wow. So very different feel. And then if you move up the coast from Bordeaux and Arcachon, you move up to a place like Lacanau, which is very well known to British audience. You get lots of Brits come to holiday in Lacanau. It's well known because it's on the surfing circuit, the global surfing circuit. So people come to surf, but there's also a fantastic lake behind, which has got fine sand, pine trees. It's got campsites, so there's mobile home opportunities to buy, as well as houses. And the houses there, if you're going to buy, they'll be probably a third of the price of Cap Ferret, just a few kilometres further down. If you go up further, you can go into other kind of territories, like a place called Montalivet, which is the biggest nudist colony in Europe. You can
now
buy.
Be careful where you're going here, right? Okay.
So there's potential. We don't sell there, but there's potentially opportunities there. But there's all types of properties for different purposes. And if you go further north, there's a beautiful small town on the coast called Soulac-sur-Mer. It's right at the point of the Gironde estuary, and there are, at the beginning of the century, 100 brick houses were built in that town. And so everybody wants one of these brick houses in the centre of Soulac. And architecturally, they're very different from what you find at Arcachon, but it's an hour's drive. So very different type of architecture. And then you've got in places like Lacanau, Biscarrosse, which is the other side further south, moving into the Landes area. You can find 1970s, 1980s builds with some renovation, which have got less character, but maybe a bit more land and a bit more accessible.
Okay.
So, and obviously the price differs depending on where you are and what type of property you're looking at. But there's a lot of variation. And then if you keep going south to the Basque area, which is touching Spain, there you've got timbered houses with all painted red on the timber and white clad houses, absolutely stunning. So the architecture is protected in that area.
Are those Basque areas politically safe and stable now?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, there's absolutely no. In fact, most of the people who live in Bordeaux actually want to live there. They all think that they're Basque. But it's
interesting. You mentioned mobile homes. I don't know whether as a company you deal with mobile homes, do you?
No, I don't. No.
Probably don't. But I can remember I was taught a very good lesson actually, and I felt quite embarrassed about it at the time. I know when I was buying in Switzerland. I bought in a place where there was a resort on the side of a mountain, but at the base of the mountain there was a sort of mobile home thing. And I sort of said to the guy, "Oh dear, there's a mobile home thing." And he said, "Really?" He said, "You think these people are not entitled to look at the mountain just as you are?" And I thought, you know what? You're absolutely right. And they have got a place and they have got a worth. And it's so nice for people, even on a limited budget, to be able to get away from the towns and enjoy these places, isn't it?
And they've, as to that point, I mean, in France, particularly around the southwest of France, these beaches are so vast and they're open to everybody, and the access is very easy.
Okay. All right, well, Joanna, Simon, thank you very much for that. That's all we've got time for in this first show on the subject of the southwest of France. Join us again next time when we'll be looking further into the geography and the potential opportunities of that part of France. I'm Stephen Galpin. Look forward to seeing you then.